When you think of the great fortunes of the Philippines, a few colossal names inevitably dominate the skyline of our thoughts. Sai, Ayala, and Gokong Wei. These are the titans of modern industry, the families whose very names are etched onto the grand shopping malls, the towering bank headquarters, and the sprawling condominium complexes that define the nation's urban landscape. Their stories are well-documented epics of staggering success, of dynasties built from the ground up that have fundamentally shaped and continue to shape the entire Philippine economy. We know their public faces, their corporate empires, and the staggering numbers that Forbes magazine meticulously tracks and publishes every single year. They are the established royalty of Filipino commerce. But what if I were to tell you that this well-known history, as impressive as it is only part of the story? What if some of the deepest, most resilient roots of wealth, power, and influence in the Philippines lie buried in a hidden history? This is a story that has been hiding in plain sight for generations, intricately woven into the fabric of Filipino high society, yet is rarely, if ever, spoken about in public. It is a sprawling narrative that connects the dazzling golden age of Philippine cinema to the quiet, mahogany-paneled boardrooms of the country's most powerful and unshakable companies. It's a multi-generational saga of faith, migration, and sheer survival, a story that stretches back centuries from the dark days of the Spanish Inquisition and the global catastrophe of World War II, all the way to the glittering, exclusive heights of Manila's modern-day elite. So, let's be very clear from the outset. This is not going to be a simple, straightforward list of the wealthiest women in the country with their net worths neatly tallied up like a corporate balance sheet. The reality of this story is infinitely more complex, more nuanced, and frankly, far more interesting than that. The story of Jewish identity and heritage in the Philippines is one of quiet integration, of names that were changed for protection, and of histories that were deliberately buried for the sake of survival and acceptance. It's a legacy that is often invisible to the casual observer. We are about to pull back the heavy velvet curtain on the Philippines' most elite, most private circles to explore the surprising and, in some cases unconfirmed, Jewish heritage of some of its most powerful and influential women. From universally beloved movie stars who became national icons to the silent matriarchs of formidable, almost untouchable business empires, we will discover the influential marriages that created dynasties and the hidden ancestry that may have been the secret bedrock of their fortunes. This is the untold story of the Philippines' most influential Jewish Filipino wives, a deep and compelling journey into a history that has remained in the shadows for far, far too long. Did you know that the wife of one of the most powerful and genuinely feared businessmen in all of Philippine history, a man whose sprawling empire was once rumored to make up a staggering chunk of the nation's entire economy, may have carried a surname that is inextricably linked to the makers of the atomic bomb? Or consider this. What if the undisputed and universally beloved queen of Philippine movies, a woman adored by millions, was born with a middle name that connects her directly through a traceable lineage to the very first Jewish families who settled in the country and helped build modern Manila? Welcome to the real, hidden world of the Philippines' true power players, the women who have so often been the silent partners, the quiet strength behind the fortunes. The stories we are about to uncover do not just speak of money, they reveal a legacy so profound and so deeply embedded that it helped reshape not just the Filipino business landscape, but its very cultural identity as well. Before we can begin to profile the extraordinary women on our list, we have to journey back in time. It's essential that we understand how a Jewish community, however small and discreet, came to exist and even thrive in a nation that is so overwhelmingly and devoutly Catholic. The Jewish story in the Philippines is not one of large, visible communities with distinct neighborhoods and public centers. Instead, it's a story of quiet, resilient, and almost invisible threads that have been woven deep into the national fabric over the course of several centuries. The very first Jews who set foot on Philippine soil did so under the constant, terrifying threat of persecution. During the height of the Spanish Inquisition in the 16th century, Spain and all of its global colonies were extraordinarily dangerous places for anyone who openly practiced Judaism. Countless individuals and families were forced to convert to Christianity, becoming known to history as conversos, or more pejoratively, Marranos. To escape the ever-watchful and merciless eyes of the Inquisition, which operated a powerful tribunal in Mexico that prosecuted cases as far away as the Philippines, some of these new Christians fled to the farthest, most remote corners of the sprawling Spanish Empire. The Philippines, being the most distant colony, was a logical, if desperate, destination. As early as 1690s, historical records show that two brothers, Jorge and Domingo Rodriguez, were arrested and prosecuted by the tribunal in Mexico, specifically for secretly practicing Judaism after having been associated with the islands. For centuries, any Jewish presence was forced deep, deep underground, a faith practiced only in secret, a heritage hidden to survive. The second, more visible and economically significant wave of Jewish immigrants arrived much later in the 1870s. Following the destructive Franco-Prussian War, three entrepreneurial Jewish brothers from the Alsace-Lorraine region of France fled the conflict in Europe. They were skilled entrepreneurs who found both a safe refuge and immense opportunity in the Philippines. They established a jewelry and general import store they called La Estrella del Norte, which quickly became a legendary and luxurious name in Manila's premier commercial district, the Immaculate Escolta. Together with other Alsatian Jews like Leopold Kahn, who would later rise to head their company, the Levy brothers and their peers formed the nucleus of a small but economically vital Jewish community in the capital. They were not just refugees, they were visionaries and innovators. They're credited with being among the first to bring revolutionary technologies like automobiles, phonographs, and even the very first moving picture machines to the country. They integrated seamlessly, married into prominent local Filipino families, and put down deep roots that would eventually connect to the absolute highest levels of Philippine high society. But the most dramatic and emotionally resonant chapter of Jewish history in the Philippines was still to come. In the 1930s, as Nazism cast its horrifying shadow over Europe, the world began systematically closing its doors to Jewish refugees fleeing for their lives. Nation after nation turned them away. And yet, one nation not yet even fully independent chose to open its arms. The Philippine Commonwealth, under the courageous leadership of President Manuel L. Quezon. The story of how this came to be sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie. The Frieder brothers, a family of American Jewish cigar makers based in Manila, used their considerable influence and their now famous poker games to lobby their powerful friends on behalf of their European brethren. Around their card table sat some of the most powerful men in Asia, figures like Colonel Dwight D. Eisenhower, the influential U.S. High Commissioner Paul V. McNutt, and President Quezon himself. Horrified by the terrifying news trickling out of Europe, they collectively hatched a bold and compassionate plan. President Quezon, with McNutt's crucial diplomatic support, created a national open-door policy for Jewish refugees. Despite some local opposition from those who feared economic and social disruption, Quezon remained resolute. He famously declared his determination and even offered up his own private land in Marikina to house the incoming refugees. Between 1937 and 1941, the Philippines accepted somewhere between 1,200 and 1,300 Jewish refugees who came to be known as the Manilaners. It was a monumental act of humanity at a time when most of the world simply looked away. The original plan was to bring in tens of thousands more, but the brutal Japanese invasion of the Philippines in 1941 tragically and abruptly stopped the effort. The synagogue in Manila was destroyed during the war, and the entire community, both local and refugee, faced the shared horrors of the occupation. This rich and layered history of hidden conversos, of pioneering European merchants, and of Holocaust survivors is the fertile soil from which the stories in our video grow. It explains precisely why Jewish heritage in the Philippines is so often a subtle matter of a single surname, a faded family story, or a forgotten ancestor. It is a legacy defined by survival, assimilation, and quiet, understated influence. And it is against this profound historical backdrop that we now turn to our first figure, a woman whose name is utterly synonymous with Filipino stardom. In the vast and glittering pantheon of Philippine cinema, very few stars have ever shone as brightly or as long as Susan Roces. For over 6 remarkable decades, she was the quintessential face of elegance, grace, and the idealized embodiment of Filipino womanhood on the silver screen. Dubbed, rightfully, the Queen of Philippine movies, she starred in more than 130 films and effortlessly captured the hearts of multiple generations of Filipinos. Her life unfolded like a national fairy tale. She was the country's biggest and most beloved female star, who married its biggest and most revered male star, Fernando Poe Jr., known to everyone simply as the King. Together, they weren't just another celebrity couple, they were regarded by the public as national royalty, a symbol of cinematic and cultural perfection. But hidden behind the screen legend, the famous name, and the iconic face lies another name, a quiet clue to a deeper, more resonant history. She was born Jesusa Purificación Levi Sonora. That middle name, Levi, is not just a name, it is a direct and traceable link to the very beginnings of the modern Jewish community in the Philippines. Susan Roces' maternal side descended directly from the influential Levi family, specifically from one of the entrepreneurial brothers who arrived from France in the 1870s and founded the famed and celebrated luxury goods store La Estrella del Norte. Genealogists, historians, and numerous historical articles have confirmed her French-Jewish mestiza heritage as a known, if not widely publicized, part of her background. So while the exact line of descent from a specific Levi brother is a granular detail for dedicated historians to reconstruct, the Levi connection itself is well established and undisputed. This simple fact makes Susan Roces one of the most prominent and beloved Filipinos of known Jewish descent in the nation's entire history. Her lineage isn't a myth or a rumor, it is a traceable line connecting a cinematic queen to the pioneering Jewish families who helped build modern Manila's commercial and social life. Her wealth, therefore, cannot be measured merely in pesos or dollars. While she was undoubtedly a very wealthy woman from her long and prolific career in film and television, her true fortune was her unparalleled and deeply respected influence. When her husband, Fernando Poe Jr., ran for president of the Philippines in 2004, Susan stood faithfully by his side, projecting an image of immense grace and dignity that resonated with millions. After his sudden and tragic loss following the election, a loss that she and many of their supporters passionately believed was the result of massive electoral fraud, she transformed into a powerful and credible opposition voice, famously calling for the sitting president's resignation. Her words carried the moral authority of a beloved and grieving queen, and when she spoke, the nation listened intently. Her story is a perfect and poignant example of what we are exploring in this video. She was a woman of verifiable Jewish descent who married into the absolute pinnacle of Filipino influence, creating a powerful dynasty of cultural and, eventually, political capital. This incredible legacy continues to this day through her daughter, Senator Grace Poe. While Grace Poe is an adopted child and thus doesn't carry the biological bloodline of cinema's king or the Jewish Levi family, she absolutely carries their powerful name and their incredible legacy of public service and popular influence into the highest echelons of the Philippine government. Susan Roces' life beautifully illustrates that true power is more than just assets on a ledger. It is about legacy, influence, and the stories we carry in our blood and in our names. It is a story not of a hidden faith, but of a heritage that so seamlessly and successfully integrated into the Filipino identity that its specific origins were almost forgotten by the general public, becoming a quiet footnote to a life lived in the brilliant spotlight. If Susan Roces represents the visible cultural power that can emerge from a hidden heritage, our next figure belongs to a world that is far more private, far more insulated, and arguably far more powerful. We now turn our attention to a name synonymous with one of the most formidable and controversial political and business dynasties in Philippine history, Cojuangco. And at the very heart of this vast dynasty, serving as its quiet and steadfast matriarch, is Soledad Gretchen Open Cojuangco. To truly understand her position, you must first understand the almost mythical empire she married into. Her late husband was Eduardo Danding Cojuangco Jr., a name that for decades has been spoken in the Philippines with a potent mixture of awe, respect, and, for many, fear. A masterful businessman and a shrewd political operator, Danding was a famously close associate and crony of President Ferdinand Marcos. He was also a key member of the Rolex 12, the secretive inner circle of military and civilian leaders who planned and executed the 1972 imposition of martial law. His business empire was nothing short of vast. The crown jewel of his holdings was the San Miguel Corporation, the largest and most dominant food and beverage company in the Philippines. He took decisive control of it in 1983, allegedly using billions of pesos from the highly controversial coconut levy tax, a fund collected from poor coconut farmers. Under his leadership, San Miguel grew from a food and beverage giant into a sprawling, diversified conglomerate with major interests in energy, power generation, oil refining, and national infrastructure projects. At the height of his power, it was once rumored that his personal business empire accounted for as much as an astonishing 25% of the Philippines' entire gross national product. Now, that 25% figure is likely a dramatic exaggeration, but the very fact that such an audacious claim could even be made and widely believed shows the sheer, almost unimaginable scale of his economic and political influence. When he passed away in 2020, Forbes magazine listed him as a billionaire, though many analysts and critics believe his true wealth was far greater and much more hidden. The woman who stood beside this titan for decades was Soledad Open Cojuangco, an heiress in her own right to significant sugar estates in Negros Occidental. She married into a level of power and wealth that few people could ever imagine. Following Danding's death in 2020, she and their 4 children inherited his immense fortune. While her personal net worth is not a matter of public record, she is widely recognized as the matriarch of a billion-dollar family fortune and is unquestionably one of the very richest women in the Philippines. But what brings her to our story, what makes her a figure of intense interest, is her maiden name, Open. The name Open, and its more globally famous variant, Oppenheimer, is a well-known Ashkenazi Jewish surname that originates from a town in Germany. Of course, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the famous father of the atomic bomb, came from a prominent German Jewish family with absolutely no known ties to the Philippines. However, seeing a distinctly European surname like Open in a prominent, wealthy family from the province of Negros opens up a fascinating and tantalizing question. Could there be a forgotten or obscured Jewish link in her ancestry? Let us be perfectly clear. This is purely speculation based on onomastics, the study of a name. As of today, no definitive public records have surfaced to confirm Jewish heritage for Soledad Open Cojuangco's family line. Unlike the well-documented Levy family of Susan Roces, the history of the Opens of Negros is much less clear in publicly accessible records. Her family tree is known to trace back to prominent Spanish Filipino clans like the Montillas and Lichaucos, which can obscure other ancestral lines. But that is precisely what makes her story so compelling for our exploration. It represents the deeper, more hidden, and more speculative layers of possible Jewish heritage in the Philippines, connections that may have been lost to time, diluted by generations of intermarriage, or even intentionally obscured for social or political reasons. Soledad Open Cojuangco, therefore, stands as the matriarch of two distinct empires. The first is the tangible, sprawling business empire of the Cojuangco family. The second is a potential empire of history, a possible and profound link to the great Jewish diaspora. Her name remains a tantalizing question mark, a potent symbol of the hidden stories that lie just beneath the surface of the Philippines' most powerful families. The stories of Susan Roces and Soledad Open Cojuangco are two high-profile, dramatic examples, but they are not the only threads in this intricate historical tapestry. The legacy of Jewish families in the Philippines is a characteristically quiet one, often revealing itself not in grand pronouncements, but in the dry annals of business history, the fine arts, and community building. Beyond the influential levies, other families like the Bachrachs and the Netzorks also left an indelible mark on the nation. Emil Bachrach, who arrived in 1901, is widely considered the first American Jew to settle permanently in the country. He built a massive business empire in transportation and was such a renowned and generous philanthropist that the very first synagogue established in Manila in 1924 was named Temple Emil in his honor, a testament to his central role in the community. The Netzorg family was also prominent in education and business, and they were key figures in the community effort to help rescue and settle the Manilaners who fled from Europe. These families often integrated deeply and successfully into the highest strata of Filipino society. Leopold Kahn, a contemporary of the Levy brothers, eventually became the president of the prestigious La Estrella del Norte and married into a local Filipino family. He was so respected for his immense charity and civic spirit that in 1934 he, a born and practicing Jew, was awarded a papal knighthood by the Archbishop of Manila, an almost unheard of, extraordinary honor that bridges cultural and religious divides. Their descendants and those of many other similar families carried names and histories that would blend over generations into the complex genealogies of the nation's most prominent clans. To truly understand the scale of wealth we are discussing, it helps to have a modern benchmark. According to the most recent Forbes lists, the wealthiest individuals in the Philippines are the Sy siblings, heirs to the SM Prime Holdings fortune. Teresita Sy Coson, the eldest daughter of the late tycoon Henry Sy, often leads the list as the country's richest woman, with a personal fortune measured in the many billions of dollars. The staggering wealth of the Sy family provides the essential modern context for what it means to be rich in the 21st century Philippines, serving as a powerful backdrop for these more subtle stories of heritage and influence. In the modern era, the Jewish-Filipino connection is evolving in fascinating new ways. While the old stories are often tales of assimilation and hidden identities, a new chapter is being written through the forces of globalization. Today, there is a growing and vibrant number of Jewish-Filipino couples and families all around the world. These are not typically unions of billion-dollar dynasties, but they represent a significant and growing cultural bridge between two ancient peoples. Countless articles and online forums tell the personal stories of Filipinos marrying into Jewish families in countries like Australia, the United States, and Israel. In many of these cases, this leads to a deep and active engagement with Jewish culture, with Filipino spouses and their children enthusiastically celebrating Jewish holidays like Hanukkah and Passover, right alongside Filipino traditions like Noche Buena. There is also the interesting and unique phenomenon of Filipino caregivers and overseas workers in Israel, some of whom have fallen in love and married Israeli citizens. To do so, many have undergone the rigorous process of formal conversion to Judaism, creating a new, dynamic, and wholly unique facet of the global Jewish community with Filipino roots. This modern trend highlights a profound shift in attitude. For centuries, Jewish heritage in the Philippines was often a thing to be hidden, a secret kept within the family. Today, for a new generation of mixed families, it is something to be actively explored, celebrated, and shared with the world. This broader context is absolutely essential. It demonstrates that the connection between the Filipino and Jewish peoples is not just some dusty historical footnote about a few powerful families from the past. It is a living, breathing, and constantly evolving relationship that continues to deepen. From the secret conversos of the Spanish colonial era to the global, multicultural families of the 21st century. We began this journey with a sensational, attention-grabbing title, Philippines' Richest Jewish Filipino Wives. But as we have discovered together, the reality is far more nuanced, far more complex, and ultimately far more profound than a simple list of billionaires. This was never intended to be a journey through the glossy pages of Forbes magazine, but rather a deep dive into the hidden, often forgotten corridors of Philippine history and identity. We uncovered the remarkable story of a nation that, at a critical moment in history, offered a safe haven to the persecuted, creating a small but resilient Jewish community against all odds. We saw how their descendants, like the legendary Susan Roces, integrated so seamlessly into the cultural fabric that their specific origins became a little-known part of their public biography, even as they rose to the absolute height of cultural influence and adoration. Her incredible legacy is a powerful testament to how heritage can be a quiet, foundational strength, a source of resilience that flows silently beneath the surface. We also peered into the opaque world of immense corporate and political power with Soledad Open Cojuangco, where a single suggestive surname opens a speculative but fascinating window into a possible hidden ancestry. Her story represents the whispers and the what-ifs that permeate Philippine genealogy, a field where centuries of colonization, intermarriage, and assimilation have left countless stories untold, perhaps lost forever. Ultimately, the story of Jewish Filipino wives is not about a clearly defined group of ultra-wealthy women who all identify in the same way. It is about the subtle, almost invisible threads of heritage, strategic marriage, and profound influence that have been woven through the very highest levels of Filipino society for generations. It is a complex narrative of survival, of strategic social and economic alliances, and of identities that are layered, fluid, and deeply personal. It proves that the full picture of wealth and power in the Philippines is fundamentally incomplete without acknowledging these powerful hidden histories. The real treasure, in the end, isn't the money or the assets, but the stories themselves, the quiet, enduring, and powerful legacy of a people who found a home in the Pearl of the Orient, and in doing so, became an unseen but essential part of its very soul.